Abandoned at 17, betrayed by everyone I loved, I spent decades building a life they could never touch until the day they knocked on my door, demanding what they'd lost. What happened next shattered everything they thought they knew and revealed a secret they never saw coming. Revenge doesn't get sweeter than this. Marina Cole had rehearsed her calm 1,000 times, but nothing quite prepared her for the sound of heavy fists on her front door. The kind of knock that assumes entitlement, the kind that announces, "We own this." It came at noon on an ordinary Tuesday in Austin, sunlight slanting through the blinds, the smell of coffee in the kitchen. Rowan, her son, tinkering with a small circuit board at the dining table, oblivious. The house hummed with ordinary life, and then that knock fractured everything. She opened the door with her palms still on the frame, face composed, shoulders tight beneath her blouse. Two people stood there, a man and a woman whose elegance had not aged into warmth. Victor Hale's jaw was a landscape of cold lines. Evelyn Hale's nails were immaculate and disinterested. They looked at Marina as if they were taking stock of a showroom and had found a broken model. "Let us see the child," Victor said, as if duty alone entitled him to possession. He stepped forward with the righteous gait of someone who believed rules were written for other people. Marina's heart moved like a metronome, slow and deliberate. For 22 years, she had kept the memory of that night, the slam of a door, the words that had unmade her, wrapped in a silence so tight it could cut. Tonight, she would not loosen that silence to beg. Instead, she would let the truth land like a weight the Hales could never lift. "What child?" she asked, voice steady. The color drained from Evelyn's face first, like paint being wiped from a canvas. Victor's eyes narrowed and then went wide, betrayed. For a moment, they stood on the threshold like intruders caught mid-theft. The words between them and Marina hung in the air, less a question than a recoil. "You what?" Victor managed. His voice had the brittle quality of someone whose certainty had cracked. Marina didn't elaborate. She let the memory do the speaking. She let the years of cold that had been piled on her adolescence, the humiliation, the eviction from a house that wasn't a home, speak for her. The scene flashed, a teenage girl with a pregnancy test clutched in trembling fingers, the mantel cluttered with framed smiles, Victor turning away like she had become an inconvenient smear on their polished life. Evelyn's nails as she pronounced a eulogy for Marina's presence in the family. The click of the door behind her that night had sounded like a verdict. Gone. Their return was not about an apology. It was about appetite. Marina saw it clearly now, the way Victor's hand flexed at his side, the practiced social pity in Evelyn's expression. They had not come because years had cured them. They had come because fame and success had a way of being irresistible. She let them believe she was shaken. "I'm sorry," she said softly, the syllables measured in a way she had perfected during 22 years of measured survival. "I'm not ready." Her voice faltered on purpose, a fragile reed bending in the wind. Victor's smile was immediate, the predatory kindness of someone who smelled leverage. "Of course," he said. "We understand. We've missed so much." He glanced past her, eyes scanning the entry as if claiming the space. Marina closed the door with slow, careful movement that disguised the thunder in her chest. She let the latch click. Behind the wood, she breathed, and the rage that had smoldered for decades burned a little brighter. Not blind fire, but a clear, calculating heat. They had come to claim what they thought they were owed. They would be taught, patiently and mercilessly, what they had lost in casting her out. She had not been idle in the years since they had shoved her into the dark. The streets had taught Marina sharp lessons, how quick trust could be ripped away, how perilous promises were from those in love with their own futures. Ethan Mercer, the boy who had once sworn forever under the prom's dim lights, had disappeared with a whisper and a blocked number. His parents had sent lawyers instead of condolences. She had slept on benches in Zilker Park, stolen warmth from strangers' cigarette heat and city brass. Those winters hollowed her in a way neither they nor Ethan could understand. They were absent architects of her suffering, but she had learned to build. From the bleeding ashes of her youth, she had cobbled a life, Small, deliberate, and hard-earned. Margaret Maggie Beaumont, a woman in her 70s with a period of luxury and the sharpness to match her cashmere coats, found her curled beneath a pecan tree one dawn. Maggie's dog, Max, nudged Marina's shoulder like an oracle. Instead of rebuke, Margaret offered coffee and, astonishingly, steady hands. "You look like you could use breakfast," Maggie said, the plain hospitality she offered more like a summons from a life Marina had been denied than charity. Margaret's house had smelled of lavender and linen and other people's possibilities. Marina accepted the invitation like a drowning person accepting a plank. From the first day, Margaret didn't merely offer shelter. She offered apprenticeship. It started in the hotel's little breakfast room where Marina took a hostess job, learning the rhythms of service, the curve of a smile, the timing of a solution, the power of listening. Margaret taught more than hospitality. She taught how to read weakness in a face and how to turn a complaint into loyalty. She taught patience and the quiet architecture of revenge. "Fortify yourself," Margaret told her one evening in her study, papers catching the lamplight. "Don't rage. Strategize. There is a difference between burning and building." Margaret's protection extended beyond mentorship. She introduced Marina to Simon Royce, a lawyer whose stare could slice through a man's polished veneer, and Lena Ortiz, a young, brilliant IT specialist with a talent for seeing what others refused to track. Gradually, the odd triumvirate that would shape Marina's reclamation assembled itself. The woman who had once lived in opulence and now had a spine of steel, the lawyer who read fine print like scripture, the technologist who made whispers into records. The miscarriage had been a wound that bled long and deep. For weeks, Marina drifted, hollow as a bell. It could have fractured her, but Maggie's steadiness and Rowan's small, unknowing presence pulled her back. They went through adoption quietly, painfully, in the austere offices of a Texas shelter. When she finally brought Rowan home, a boy with curious eyes and a slow, stubborn smile, Marina's grief found a place to anchor, the gentle, fierce love that grew like a secret out of winter mud. She named him Rowan Austin Cole, after the city that had once crushed her and then remade her. Rowan's small, sure hands closing around her finger felt like a rebirth. From the beginning, Marina taught Rowan more than the alphabet. She taught him how to disassemble a radio and reassemble it. At 8, he wrote his first line of code. At 10, he built an app that solved a problem for a local snag in restaurant bookings. At 12, he was building software that made small operations run smoother. Marina didn't engineer prodigy. She engineered opportunity. Every class, every summer camp, every careful nudge pointed toward the day Rowan would be impossible to ignore. Margaret watched Marina the way a gardener watches a sapling grow. "Make it impossible for them to pretend they didn't notice what you built," she advised, tapping a stack of papers with a manicured finger. She also made sure that the legal foundations beneath Marina and Rowan were immovable: trusts, adoption clauses, documented relinquishment forms that carried signatures and dates like anchors. Simon Royce drew up a trust so airtight it could have been a bank vault. The keys were kept in a safe whose combination matched Rowan's adoption date, an act equal parts symbolism and security. When Rowan's software began to catch attention, Marina did not balk. She fed it into channels deliberately, anonymously tipping a few savvy local tech writers into noticing this rising young developer whose optimization patch had quietly saved a string of small hotels money. The story spread like a seed on dry wind. Within days, headlines touted Rowan's algorithm as a quiet revolution. It didn't take long for the Hales to smell opportunity. A tablet arrived on Marina's doorstep wrapped in expensive paper. The card read, "For our talented grandson, time to reconnect." The note was perfunctory, but its intent was as loud as a slamming door. Marina sent it back with trembling handwriting on purpose. Her shaky script, penned in a moment of faux vulnerability, invited a probing sympathy the Hales would mistake for weakness. She built an illusion the way others build altars. Lena traced the Hales' curious clicks and searches, tapping into the arcs of their digital curiosity. Victor and Evelyn's web footprints began to glow on Lena's monitors, small flickers, searches for grandparent rights Texas, reclaiming estranged relatives, browser tabs on inheritance law. Simon's legal I notice sloppy filings, odd dates, and the reemergence of old documents. He filed preemptive counters, quietly, efficiently. Margaret's investigators, people with the art of finding what men thought buried, began to catalog every contact, every consultant, every social media post the Hales made about charity and reconciliation. Marina's denials were a weapon. "I can't do this now," she said into the phone, voice fraying enough to suggest the tender flesh of someone pushed to the edge. Victor's replies grew more insistent. He sent invitations cloaked in nostalgia. Evelyn posted languid public statements about the tragedy of estrangement and the desire to make amends. Lena, with surgical calm, linked these posts to bot activity and paid influencers. Simon compiled drafts of correspondence that made Victor's and Evelyn's motives plain. Greed masked as guilt. They stumbled into their own undoing by being greedy. Marina baited them with a rumor here, a carefully leaked document there. She fed a phantom of hope, then let them chase it. She planted an anonymous email, seemingly from a potential associate, suggesting that Ethan Mercer, the small-time entrepreneur who'd once left Marina behind, was angling for a cut in Rowan's projected fortune. She pushed the Hales into a flurry of messages to each other, to old lawyers, to the quiet men who did favors in exchange for connections. Lena recorded it all, their panic, their scheming, and Simon archived the evidence with a calm efficiency that made Marina think of a chess master tucking away captured pieces. Victor's temper frayed. Evelyn prowled social feeds for pity. Ethan, the ghost of Marina's teenage escape, reappeared in whispers, a name traded for leverage. It was exactly what Marina had designed. Once they believed the gold was real, their caution evaporated. They began to overreach. The plan tightened like a noose. Marina sat in a back row at the Austin Tech Summit, Rowan at her side in a jacket she'd bought him the week before. He had rehearsed the speech not for showmanship, but because Marina had taught him how to turn a single idea into a conversation that could not be ignored. She watched Victor and Evelyn and Ethan at the front row, their smiles too bright, their bodies betraying the unease she had nurtured into a trap. Margaret's video, a calm, stately address about chosen family and the cruelty of abandonment, played on the screen behind Rowan, warm and lucid and aimed with surgical precision. It called out the one thing the audience already felt in the bones of these small, increasingly suspicious cities. Character matters more than blood. Simon Royce stepped forward and produced paper. The signature, the legal relinquishment. The Hales had signed 22 years ago, a tidy confession of abandoning Marina and any claim to her or her children. The projection of their own handwriting in black and white across the auditorium was humiliating and irreversible. Lena let the emails appear on the big screen, voices captured, plans exposed, the merciless reality of their motives laid bare. When Marina finally rose, she spoke with a voice that had swallowed a lifetime of rage and learned to shape it into something exact. "You wanted my child," she said. "There is no child tied by blood. You drove me to a miscarriage. Rowan is mine, adopted, loved, and shielded. He is the son I raised from grief into brilliance. You have no rights." The auditorium's buzz turned into a slow, stunned hush. Phones lifted. Cameras found faces. Victor's composure cracked first. Evelyn's pale stare went slack as the reality of being exposed unfolded like a trapdoor beneath them. Security closed in.
Papers were waived.
Simon announced emergency restraining orders, and men in suits moved with a discretion that felt like finality. The Hales were escorted out under a public floodlight of shame. Marina felt the release like cold water. It was not a triumph of cruelty, she told herself. It was justice, deliberate and precise, a correction for what had been done to her as a child. Across social feeds the next days, clips of the summit went viral. Contacts severed from Victor's business as reputations, fragile things, turned brittle in the face of scandal. Boards that had once sat at Victor's feet quietly voted him out. Evelyn's friends no longer answered calls. Ethan found his own fortunes curdling into audits and whispers of impropriety. But Marina did not gloat. Her victory was not theatrical. It was built like a foundation stone. She moved in the aftermath with the same steady hand she had used to teach Rowan to solder wires into circuits. The Kayla Beaumont Foundation, renamed in honor of the woman who had given her a life, took its first step toward reality. Margaret's estate funded it generously before she passed. The foundation's mission was simple and unforgivingly practical: housing, legal aid, and vocational training for single mothers who had been abandoned for reasons that mirrored Marina's early life. At the foundation's opening, surrounded by people whose faces glowed with relief and possibility, Marina found Simon and slid a ring onto his finger. He asked with a smile that was more home than ceremony. Rowan clapped, loud and delighted. The cameras caught a tableau the Hales had never imagined. Marina, small and radiant in triumph, building a life that silenced whispers and opened doors. Still, the final chords of the plan were quieter than the public spectacle. Marina had chosen not to press every advantage to cruelty. There were legal paths that had to be followed, reputations to be rebuilt, and the very human tangle of mercy and restraint to navigate. She had taught Rowan resilience, yes, but also grace. As she watched Simon and Rowan talk in low, familiar tones near the reception table, a small, unsettled part of Marina stirred. Revenge had a cold sweetness to it, but even as the Hales slumped into ruin and Rowan's apps climbed, something in Marina kept watch for the cost. She had set a justice course and had steered it well. Yet life, even the life of a woman who had constructed triumph out of abandonment, would continue to demand a currency in the things she loved. The first segment of her victory closed with applause and the soft clink of champagne glasses. Underneath the triumph, a thread of tension remained, a promise that the reveal at the summit was not the end, but a hinge. There would be fallout. There would be those who would try to rewrite the story in dark corners. Marina felt the weight of it, not as fear, but as the next phrase of a long-sung song. When she left the building that night, the lights in Austin stitched themselves into the horizon like a promise. Behind her, the Hales' names were already being erased from the places that once gave them status. Ahead of her, the foundation's work loomed, long, unglamorous, necessary. And in the quiet between tasks, Marina wrapped her arms around Rowan, feeling his heartbeat against her. Steady as ever. Whatever came next, she thought, the plan would be ready. The days following the Austin Tech Summit blurred into a whirlwind of strategy, press attention, and quiet victories. Marina Cole sat in her home office, the walls lined with awards, schematics, and framed snapshots of Rowan's earliest coding achievements. The taste of triumph still lingered, but Marina knew the summit was only the first move in a long game. Victor and Evelyn Hale were bruised but not yet broken, and Marina had learned long ago that people like them thrived on desperation, on the illusion of entitlement. Simon Royce's voice broke her concentration. Marina, I've reviewed the filings. The Hales are moving quickly. They've hired a new attorney in Scottsdale. They're desperate, yes, but intelligent. Not sloppy yet. Marina leaned back in her chair, fingers tapping the wood. Let them be intelligent, she said. Every step they take, we've already anticipated. We have the advantage. Lena Ortiz's laptop pinged. Screens lit up with traces of activity, encrypted messages, social media posts, digital footprints of people attempting to contact Rowan under pretenses. Marina leaned over, studying the patterns.
See that, she said.
They're probing, testing our defenses. And they're doing it publicly, Lena added, scrolling through the posts. Notice the hashtags? Hashtag family reunion, hashtag estranged child. They're trying to rally support, gain sympathy, make us look like the villains. Marina's lips curved into a small, deliberate smile. Perfect. Let them dig their own graves. Every post, every comment, every public plea, they're building the case for their own undoing. We just watch and we wait. Her calm was precise, but behind it burned a quiet fury. 22 years of abandonment had sculpted Marina into a strategist, each wound a brick in the fortress she now commanded. And Rowan was the crown jewel of that fortress, protected, brilliant, and untouchable. Victor Hale was seething in Scottsdale, pacing the small condo he and Evelyn now called home. Gone was the grandeur of their Austin mansion. Gone were the neighbors who whispered praise at cocktail parties. Their world had contracted into a single dimension: obsession with Rowan, with Marina, with reclaiming a legacy they had abandoned decades ago. "Evelyn, we can't just let her humiliate us in front of everyone," Victor snapped, slamming a fist onto the glass coffee table. Evelyn's response was a delicate exhale, her nails drumming on the surface of the table like a metronome of irritation. "Victor, calm down. We have options. Legal options. PR options. We can still control the narrative if we play it carefully." Victor's jaw twitched. "Control the narrative? She's made us fools, Evelyn. And Rowan, that boy, he's not even ours, and she's using him like a shield." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Then we target what she loves most."
The boy. Force her to respond.
"Make her compromise." Victor paused, realization dawning, but Marina had already anticipated this. Back in Austin, Marina reviewed Lena's latest surveillance report. Rowan had been followed to his coding camp, minor observations that suggested curiosity, not malice, but the intent was clear. Victor and Evelyn were attempting to insert themselves into his world. Marina leaned forward. "Rowan's protected," she said softly. "But we use this. Let them believe they're getting close. Let them invest emotionally. Every step they take toward Rowan is a step into the trap we've set." Simon nodded. "I've drafted additional restraining orders, ready to file the moment they attempt direct contact. We cover every legal angle. And Lena's tracking every approach digitally. Nothing slips by." Margaret Beaumont's voice joined the conversation over the secure line.
"Good.
But remember, Marina, patience is our weapon. The Hales are greedy and impulsive. Every time they think they've cornered you, they'll overreach. That's when we strike." Marina smiled, feeling the familiar thrill of strategy coursing through her. Every loss she had endured as a teenager, the rejection, the betrayal, the forced independence, had been building toward this moment. And now, she wielded it like a blade, precise and unrelenting. Victor and Evelyn escalated. Their next move was subtle but calculated. They arranged a charity gala in Scottsdale, claiming to honor estranged children who had overcome adversity. The invitation was crafted to reach Marina, to draw her into a public confrontation they believed she could not refuse. Marina received the gilded envelope, Rowan watching curiously as she held it in her hands. She read the lines aloud, her tone casual. An invitation to reconcile, a public celebration of family triumphs. Rowan's eyes met hers, understanding without needing explanation. She folded the envelope and set it aside. "We attend," she said, "but on our terms. They think this is about reconciliation. It's about observation. They'll reveal themselves if they underestimate us." Simon, Lena, and Margaret all nodded in unison. The team's synergy had become a silent force, each member anticipating the other's moves, each piece part of a larger design. The night of the gala arrived. Scottsdale's social scene glittered with wealth and influence, but Marina and Rowan entered not as guests but as strategists. Rowan wore a sharp jacket, his posture confident, carrying the aura of someone who had long been prepared for scrutiny. Marina's gaze swept the room, noting Victor and Evelyn's subtle gestures, their attempts at charm, the way they positioned themselves near the press to maximize exposure. Margaret's pre-recorded message played on screens around the hall, highlighting the value of chosen family, of resilience, and the cruel irony of abandonment. Cameras caught the Hales' discomfort, and Marina could see Victor's jaw tighten, Evelyn's hands fidgeting as she adjusted her necklace. The trap unfolded elegantly. Marina had leaked rumors to select journalists that Rowan's coding projects had attracted venture capital interest. She timed it perfectly. Cameras and reporters buzzed around him, asking questions that forced Victor and Evelyn to react publicly. They fumbled, exposed as opportunists, their words and gestures betraying their intent. By the end of the evening, the Hales were publicly humiliated. Their attempts to claim a connection with Rowan backfired spectacularly. Marina's team captured every interaction, every misstep, every incriminating statement. By the time the gala ended, Victor and Evelyn were surrounded by whispers of scandal. Their social influence diminished, their credibility eroded. Days turned into weeks, and the Hales' desperation deepened. They attempted direct contact through intermediaries, through attorneys, even through Rowan's friends, but Marina's preparation was airtight. Every approach was anticipated, every contact neutralized. The legal net, the digital surveillance, the psychological forethought, all converged into a perfect defense. And yet, Marina knew the story was far from over. The Hales were clever, resourceful, and relentless. The final reckoning had not yet come. She could feel it in the way Rowan coded late into the night, in the careful monitoring of the Hales' attempts to manipulate public perception, in the subtle shifts in her team's reports. Marina sat in her office, Rowan beside her, and allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. 22 years of pain, betrayal, and loss had led to this precise orchestration of justice. She had built a life so resilient, so luminous, that the Hales' greed and cruelty could no longer penetrate it. And yet, beneath the satisfaction, a sliver of tension remained. The Hales had been forced into retreat, but Marina knew their pride, and envy would not allow them to disappear quietly. The next move was imminent, and when it came, Marina Cole would be ready, not just to defend, but to ensure that their reckoning was complete, irreversible, and unforgettable. The first part of her revenge had been executed flawlessly. The next part would be even more devastating. And as Marina looked at Rowan, the boy who had been both her salvation and her instrument of justice, she whispered, "It's not over yet. Not by a long shot." The city lights of Austin shimmered in the distance, a promise of the battles to come, and Marina felt the familiar thrill of strategy, patience, and inevitability. Every piece was in place. Every weakness had been exposed. And the final act, when it arrived, would leave no doubt. Betrayal has a price, and Marina Cole always collected. The weeks following the Scottsdale Gala were a tense calm before a storm. Marina Cole sat in her Austin office, the skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, her mind a chessboard of calculated moves and contingencies. Rowan's latest software had just gone live with unprecedented success, drawing attention from investors worldwide. Marina allowed herself a small, rare smile, but the thrill of victory was tempered by a persistent awareness. Victor and Evelyn Hale were still plotting. Their pride would not permit them to vanish quietly, and their next attempt could be reckless enough to expose them fully, or dangerously close to Rowan. Simon Royce tapped his pen against a folder of legal documents. "Marina, the Hales have escalated again. This time, they're attempting a hostile PR campaign, hiring private investigators under the guise of a tech audit. They're trying to find anything, personal emails, social connections, even Rowan's old coding projects before he was 10, to force a compromise." Marina leaned forward, her gaze sharp. "Let them dig. Every move they make, every overreach, feeds into the story we've been writing for them. If they want dirt, they'll find themselves buried in their own mistakes." Lena Ortiz's laptop pinged. And they're impatient. I've traced their activity across multiple channels. They're reaching out to Rowan's mentors, even some investors, planting seeds of doubt about his management abilities. Marina's lips pressed into a firm line. "Perfect. Let them play. We don't react. At least not yet. Let's observe, record, and prepare for the perfect counterstrike." Her calm, however, belied a simmering anger. The betrayal she had endured, the years of exile, the miscarried child, and the relentless pursuit of her by people who should have loved her, all of it had forged her into a woman capable of precision vengeance. Rowan had become both her greatest joy and her ultimate weapon, a living testament to resilience and ingenuity. Victor Hale's frustration was palpable as he paced the cramped Scottsdale condo. "Evelyn, we need to be bolder," he snapped, voice tight with anger. "Publicity, legal action, it's not enough. She's turning every move we make into our own downfall. We need to hit where it hurts." "Evelyn, ever the cooler strategist, adjusted her scarf and sat down, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Victor, patience. Every rash move we make will play into her hands. We need to understand her strategy first. Victor's jaw tightened. I understand her strategy. She's controlling everything. She's using that boy to manipulate us. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Then we use the same logic. If Rowan is the leverage she believes she has, we find a way to make him a public issue. Force her to respond. Little did they know, Marina had already anticipated this. Rowan's schedule, his friends, and even the smallest tech communities he frequented were under discreet surveillance. Every potential angle of attack was monitored, every interaction logged, every communication scrutinized. Marina's network of lawyers, digital specialists, and trusted allies formed an invisible fortress. One morning, Marina received an encrypted message from Lena. They're moving faster than expected. A private investigator was spotted near Rowan's school. Could escalate to harassment. Marina's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then she smiled faintly. Not harassment, bait. She gathered her team in the war room, an office lined with screens showing real-time social media activity, investor communications, and private security feeds. Simon, Lena, and Margaret Beaumont were already seated, their expressions attentive. We're going to let them think they've found a vulnerability, Marina explained. We'll feed them controlled information, enough to make them believe Rowan's distracted, unsettled. Every message they trace, every contact attempt, they're walking into the scenario we've crafted. Simon nodded. We maintain all legal protections. Restraining orders are ready to deploy instantly, if necessary. Margaret added. And the PR angle? If they leak anything, we expose the manipulation immediately. Every overreach is an advantage. Marina's gaze fell on Rowan, who sat quietly beside her, fingers tapping the edge of the desk. Remember, she whispered to him, they thrive on impatience and greed. Stay calm, stay focused. They're playing their hand, and we're watching every card. Victor and Evelyn escalated their tactics further. Through shadowy intermediaries, they began contacting Rowan's early collaborators, claiming to represent investors concerned about the boy's exposure to public scrutiny. Emails were carefully worded to appear innocuous, yet they contained subtle insinuations meant to unsettle him. But Rowan was prepared. Marina had taught him to recognize manipulation, to identify the bait, and to respond strategically. He forwarded the emails to Lena, who immediately traced them to the Hale's new attorney and compiled screenshots of their attempts at subterfuge. Meanwhile, Marina orchestrated a counter-narrative. Anonymous blog posts and tech forum discussions highlighted Rowan's autonomy and ethical decision-making. The posts subtly referenced the Hale's desperation, without naming them, planting seeds of doubt in the wider tech community about anyone attempting to interfere. Within days, their social engineering efforts backfired, drawing ridicule instead of sympathy. The tension reached a boiling point when Rowan's latest software launch coincided with Victor's attempt to infiltrate one of his investor meetings. Marina had anticipated the maneuver. She arranged for discreet video surveillance and preemptive legal presence. When the Hale's representatives arrived, they were met with polite but firm legal intervention. Their access was denied. Cameras captured their surprised, frustrated reactions, evidence that Marina would use if necessary. Afterward, Rowan turned to Marina. They'll keep trying, won't they? Marina's hand brushed his shoulder, firm and reassuring. Yes, but each attempt only reveals more about them. Every overreach is another step toward their undoing. Patience, strategy, and precision. Our tools are stronger than their greed. That night, Marina reviewed Lena's surveillance reports. Victor and Evelyn were becoming increasingly reckless, contacting multiple associates, leaving digital traces, and displaying unmistakable signs of panic. Marina allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. The Hale's pride and envy were pushing them into errors they could not recover from, and the final stage of her plan was drawing near. Marina leaned back in her chair, the city lights of Austin casting a golden glow across her desk. Rowan's coding monitors displayed complex algorithms and live data streams, a symbol of their hard-earned power. She whispered, almost to herself, "They've underestimated us for the last time. Their reckoning is coming, and when it does, there will be no escape." The storm had been set in motion, and Marina Cole was at its center, calm, prepared, and unstoppable. The ultimate confrontation, the emotional reckoning, and the irreversible dismantling of Victor and Evelyn Hale's empire were on the horizon. The morning sun filtered through Marina Cole's Austin penthouse, reflecting off polished surfaces and sleek monitors that displayed Rowan's latest software analytics. The calm before the storm had ended. Every report from Lena and Simon indicated the Hales' impatience had become dangerous, and Marina knew the moment for decisive action had arrived. "Today is the day," Marina said, voice steady but sharp. Rowan looked up from his coding interface, his eyes reflecting both determination and inherited resilience. Marina had trained him well. He was not just her son in choice, but her partner in strategy. Margaret Beaumont joined via secure video call, her expression serious. "All legal measures are prepared. Temporary restraining orders, counterclaims, and PR measures are ready. Their desperation is peaking. The cracks are showing. One misstep from them, and it's over." Simon added, "I've coordinated with local authorities. Every possible escalation has a preemptive plan. They won't get near Rowan, physically or legally." Marina nodded.
Good.
"Then we move. Execute the plan we've rehearsed." Victor Hale was pacing his Scottsdale condo, phone in hand, fury and panic warring across his features. Evelyn sat silently, her carefully constructed veneer beginning to crumble. Their latest attempt, an orchestrated smear campaign against Rowan's coding projects, had backfired spectacularly. Social media backlash was swift. Investors questioned their credibility, and anonymous tech forums had begun dissecting their motives. "They're laughing at us," Victor snapped. "How can Marina make every move we make backfire?" Evelyn's voice was low, measured. "She anticipated us. She knows exactly how we think. We've played right into her hands for decades without realizing it. And Rowan, he's untouchable. We can't manipulate what's protected." Victor slammed the phone down, shoving documents across the table. "We need one final strike. If we can force a public confrontation, make her show weakness." Evelyn's eyes flicked to the clock. "We'll do it. But one wrong move, and this collapses entirely." Unbeknownst to them, Marina had anticipated every variant of their final strike. Their pride and impatience made them predictable. The decisive moment arrived at the Austin Tech Innovation Forum, an event Marina had orchestrated under the guise of Rowan presenting his newest project. The venue was packed with investors, journalists, and industry leaders. Cameras lined the stage, streaming live to a global audience. Marina entered with Rowan, exuding calm authority. She had prepped every word, every gesture, every facial expression to counter any attempt by the Hales to intimidate or manipulate. Victor and Evelyn appeared shortly afterward, escorted by attorneys, hoping for a public display to shame Marina. They had been told that Rowan might reveal a family secret on stage. The anticipation fueled their desperation. As Rowan took the stage, Marina positioned herself slightly behind him, a silent guardian and strategist. He began speaking about his latest software platform, emphasizing innovation, ethical coding, and resilience in the face of obstacles. The audience was rapt, unaware of the personal stakes unfolding in the front row. Then Marina's team executed the next phase. Lena's screens illuminated the walls, projecting evidence of the Hales' manipulations, emails, intercepted messages, and recordings of their attempts to contact Rowan and exploit his work for personal gain. Every document was time-stamped, every word verified. The room gasped. Cameras caught Victor's tightening jaw, Evelyn's rigid posture. The weight of their duplicity was laid bare for the world to see. Marina stepped forward, calm, precise, and unflinching. "You wanted my child," she said, voice cutting through the murmurs. "But there is no child. Your cruelty cost me what could have been, and the boy you hope to manipulate is not yours. He is Rowan, my choice, my family, and untouchable by people who abandoned me decades ago." The audience erupted in a mixture of shock and admiration. Journalists began live reporting, broadcasting Marina's words, exposing Victor and Evelyn's greed and entitlement. Simon Royce and Margaret Beaumont moved in, presenting the signed legal documents, relinquishment of parental rights, and proof of all prior claims waived decades ago. The Hales were trapped, legally, socially, and morally. Victor's voice faltered. But he's our grandson. Marina's gaze was icy.
No.
He is mine by choice. Your blood means nothing when it's stained with betrayal. You abandoned me. You abandoned your chance at a family. Everything you believed you could claim has been stripped away, fairly, legally, and irreversibly. Evelyn attempted a response, her voice trembling. We were only trying to reconnect. Marina's hand gestured toward the screens. Reconnect? You tried to manipulate and control, to exploit what you had no right to touch. This is not about reconciliation. This is about accountability, about facing the consequences of your actions. Security moved in as restraining orders were formally served. Victor and Evelyn were escorted from the venue, their humiliation broadcast live. Social media exploded. The hashtag Hale scandal trended globally within hours. Even Derek Hale, their son, was implicated indirectly. His attempts to manipulate Marina for a financial cut were exposed through intercepted messages, his reputation was tarnished, and his career was in jeopardy. In the quiet aftermath, Marina stood with Rowan at the steps of the forum, watching as the press continued their coverage. He turned to her, eyes bright with understanding. You were amazing, he said softly. Marina smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering resolve. No, we were. Together, we built a life too strong for them to break. And now, it's they who are broken. The next morning, Marina officially launched the Cole Foundation for Innovation and Resilience, funded by Kayla Rhoda's estate and her own investments. Its mission: empowering young women and single mothers with technology education, mentorship, and housing support. The first grant went to a young coder with a toddler in tow, a reflection of Marina's past, and a beacon of hope for the future. Simon knelt slightly, presenting Marina with a small velvet box. For the strategist who built not just revenge, but a legacy. Inside was a ring, understated but elegant. Marina looked at Rowan, then at Simon. Make this family official? She asked. Yes, he replied, grinning. Rowan clapped in delight beside them. In Scottsdale, Victor and Evelyn faced the fallout. Their social circle evaporated, business deals collapsed, and legal repercussions loomed. Derek's offshore accounts were seized. He faced federal charges for tax evasion. Their empire, built on greed and manipulation, had crumbled entirely. Marina, in Austin, watched the news coverage quietly, Rowan beside her. The sense of closure was profound, yet she knew the scars of the past were permanent reminders of resilience, strategy, and justice. She turned to Rowan and whispered, Revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about building something unbreakable. And we did that together. As the sun set over the city, the Cole penthouse was filled with warmth, laughter, and a future untouchable by those who had once tried to destroy them. Marina's journey, from abandonment and betrayal to triumph and protection, had reached its peak, leaving the Hales' world in ruins and her own legacy secure. The story ended not with vengeance alone, but with justice, family by choice, and the ultimate truth: those who betray the heart of resilience will always pay the price.